Yes, we had started reading chapter 18, but we did not complete it. And we had wanted to read and see what became of Absalom. And you will remember, just to recap for maybe people who are not around, in the story, Absalom, who was David's son, decided he wanted to throw his own father out of power and to assume rulership of Israel. Can you imagine your own father? And so he gathered about an army, a big army too, and he and some of David's staff members, and he now took over into some extent. David had to run because he realized this young man was very, very serious and that he would kill him. So David ran. He had a certain amount of soldiers that remained loyal to him, and he's running, he's praying. Long and short, a war erupted, and the young man Absalom was caught in a tree by his hair or by his head. And some of David's men went and killed him and buried him. And so we're going to pick up from there.
Joab said, I am not going to wait like this for you. So he took 3 javelins in his hand and plunged them into Absalom's heart, while Absalom was still alive in the oak tree. And 10 of Joab's armor bearers surrounded Absalom, struck him, and killed him. Then Joab sounded the trumpet, and the troops stopped pursuing Israel, for Joab halted them. They took Absalom, threw him into a pit in the forest, and piled up a large heap of rocks over him. Meanwhile, all the Israelites fled to their homes. During his lifetime, Absalom had taken a pillar and erected it in the king's valley as a monument to himself, for he thought, I have no son to carry on the memory of my name. He named the pillar after himself, and it is called Absalom's monument to this day.
Praise be to God. Before we go further, let's make some comments here. So that's the way in which Absalom died. And it had to be the hand of God, because however much we can think of how much hair he had on his head, just the thought of being caught up in a tree by his head seems like something beyond the natural, right? And if you remember the story, David had said to Joab, Abishai, and Ittai the Gittite, do not kill my son Absalom. And, don't kill him. Now, here's the question, and I want some quick answers so we don't take much time. 1, do you agree with David's decision? Do not kill my son Absalom. That was a warning he gave the leaders of the army. 2, what do you think David had wanted the outcome to be of this war between his soldiers and the soldiers who supported Absalom?
Pastor Helen, I think David was hoping for some form of reconciliation. He wanted, things to kind of get to be resolved, but he did not want his son to die like any father would.
How? What do you think he had in his heart and mind? What kind of resolution was he seeking?
I'm wondering, Pastor. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I said I'm wondering if he wanted an amicable resolution where himself and Absalom settled their differences, in conversation, and he would peacefully hand over the throne at some point. So, knowing David, he'd probably give Absalom some kind of position and, start making preparations to hand over. And that's where my thought is at.
One thing about the handing over, I think God had made it plain that Solomon was to succeed him. So I don't think he could hand over the throne to Absalom.
Pastor Helen?
Yes.
I think David genuinely wanted Absalom to come to his senses and to just let go of this issue of pursuing him and trying to usurp him. That's my honest opinion.
All right. So basically, everybody's agreeing that he wanted a peaceful settlement, which number one looked impossible because they were at war. People were dying. And if you notice David's statement, he said, spare my son Absalom. He didn't say spare the other soldiers, Absalom. So what was he planning to do with Absalom? If you remember the history of this man, this was a man who killed his own brother because of an issue with his sister, right? And who was put into exile because of that act by his father. When he came back, his father would not even allow him to come into his house or to see him face to face. He was in another type of exile, even though he was now back in Israel. And there was, eventually he wanted to see his father. So what did he do? He called Joab and burned down Joab's field to get Joab's attention. And then when he finally saw his father, I think. Oh no, don't let. I might be getting. That was when he wanted. That was what he wanted. Yes, that was it, right? Now, what kind of person? He spent the next how many years undermining his father's kingship? One, you have to ask yourself the question: was David aware of what Absalom was doing? 4 years, roughly 4 years, he was doing it. It wasn't like 2 days. So was he aware that his son was working like that in his kingdom? So what does he expect to do with a young man, excuse me, with this type of profile? It's a dangerous guy. I was thinking about it and I was saying maybe he had planned to put him back in exile. Don't kill him. Maybe in his head, I'll let him go back to his mom's father's kingdom. Right? Stay there, don't come. But you'll be alive, at least alive, right? No, that might be what he was thinking, because somebody like that you couldn't have in proximity to you. This man is dangerous. Second question, did you agree with David's decision? Don't kill my son Absalom. Anybody?
No, I didn't
No.
agree with that.
It sounds foolhardy to me, but is there anybody who thought maybe that was a wise thing to do? Don't bother kill him, just spare him.
Pastor,
I
I
don't
just think he loved him so much. He's blinded by his love for his son.
Yeah, in other words, you feel it wasn't sound judgment. He wasn't
No.
making sound judgment. He was just operating off emotions.
Yes, miss.
Yeah, yeah. That's saddy. And
Yeah.
it's that we can have children. I've read stories of people. I remember a lady, an interview. Was it that? I think the young man was called Preke Boy, or I hope I got the name right. In St. James. And his mother had been
That is correct, Pastor.
she had been thrown in prison for him, because police is saying, you know something that you're not telling us. She was actually put in jail at a given period. She was attacked. Her life was in jeopardy. She had spoken to him. She had done everything she could. She had even raised him in church when he was young. And I remember she said she was somewhere in this town, I think. And when she heard some gunfire in her heart, she knew. I said, I forget the name of the young man, his correct name, but she said, that's it, my son, that's it.
It's correct, Pastor. Pricky boy.
No, that was his alias. She said when he was shot and she heard the gunshot, she didn't even know, but as she heard it, she knew it was her son, and she said, that's my son. He said, that's it, my son, it's over, that's it. Now, a woman like that, oh Lord, have mercy. We pray that we'll never have children like that will be torn into a place where their death is better, right? So anybody here would agree that Joab's decision to kill him, what do you think of Joab's decision to kill Absalom? What are the thoughts towards that? He actually disobeyed his father, David, his king, his boss. He disobeyed him completely. What do you think?
He was in a place of objectivity, Pastor Helen. He was looking
Yes,
at
Joab.
the reality of what was before him.
Yes,
I hear you speak. And I have a cousin who something like this happened to,
yes.
He was, going around just stealing on rapid, just like that. And his father called the police on him to kill him.
Wow.
And they did. I was actually there. I was about 7, 8 years old.
Wow.
We had gone because my mother went, everybody trying to appeal to the father, don't kill him, don't kill him. But the father had just had enough, because persons are complaining, he has had to be forking up money every now and again, etc., to repay and so on. He said,
Yes.
this is it, we're done. So Joab was at a place of objectivity, and he was able to see Absalom for who Absalom really was. And so
Right.
he made the right decision.
So most people agree that Joab's decision was a good one. Just kill the guy. Even though it's not what David wanted. I personally think so. And the thing about it, remember I said one week that I think David owed a lot to Joab, a whole lot. There are times when David, for some reason, made bad decisions. And I'm telling the truth, we're like that too. It's not every day we wake up and make good decisions. And so what we ought to be praying is, Father, help me to make good decisions at all times. Because even that decision not to kill Absalom was really off. If you notice when the soldiers were leaving, that was his focus. He didn't say to Joab, boy, I really pray God will keep you guys, boy, have courage, fight a good war, try and keep the men as safe as possible. That did not come out of David's mouth. All that was coming out, kill my son Absalom. What we also can see from the passage, he knew in his heart the type of men who were going into battle. He knew Joab, he knew Abishai, he knew Ittai, he knew these men. He had worked with them for many years. These were men who were in the wilderness with him, some of them. He knew them, and he knew he had to make an appeal because their first inclination was to kill his son. So he's warning them. So that's where we're at. Let's continue reading, Mrs. Morris.
Now Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, let me run and take the news to the king that the Lord has vindicated him by delivering him from the hands of his enemies. You are not the one to take the news today, Joab told him. You may take the news another time, but you must not do so today because the king's son is dead. Then Joab said to a Cushite, go tell the king what you have seen. The Cushite bowed down before Joab and ran off. Where am I? Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, again said to Joab, come what may, please let me run behind the Cushite. But Joab replied, my son, why do you want to go? You don't have any news that will bring you a reward. He said, come what may, I want to run. So Joab said, run. Then Ahimaaz ran by way of the plain and outran the Cushite. While David was sitting between the inner and outer gates, the watchman went up to the roof of the gateway by the wall. As he looked out, he saw a man running alone. The watchman called out to the king and reported it. The king said, if he's alone, he must have good news. And the runner came closer and closer. Then the watchman saw another runner, and he called down to the gatekeeper, look, another man running alone. The king said, he must be bringing good news too. The watchman said, it seems to me that the first one runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok. He's a good man, the king said. He comes with good news. Then Ahimaaz called out to the king, all is well? He bowed down before the king with his face to the ground and said, praise be to the Lord your God. He has delivered up those who lifted their hands against my lord the king. The king asked, is the young man Absalom safe? Ahimaaz answered, I saw great confusion, just as Joab was about to send the king's servant and me, your servant, but I don't know what it was. The king said, stand aside and wait here. So he stepped aside and stood there. Then the Cushite arrived and said, my lord the king, hear the good news. The Lord has vindicated you today by delivering you from the hand of all who rose up against you. The king asked the Cushite, is the young man Absalom safe? The Cushite replied, may the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up to harm you be like that young man. The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom. If only I had died instead of you, oh Absalom, my son, my son. Praise
God. Listen, let's look a little at the dynamics of what was happening. Go back up to where we start. We read. She began reading. What was happening here between Ahimaaz and the Cushite and Joab? What was happening? What was that dialogue all about? Why do you think Ahimaaz wanted to go? Why did Joab not want Ahimaaz to go? Somebody explain it to me, please. Anybody?
I'm wondering, Pastor Brown, if Ahimaaz wanted to go for the glory of bringing in the news first. But Joab was wise enough to know that this news is hard, so let an outsider, this Cushite, carry the news.
That's exactly it. Let an outsider. You're too close to the king, Ahimaaz. This is no good news. The king's son is dead. This is not a. He's going to be shaken. He's going to be broken. Let us a guy who doesn't know the dynamics. If you know so the Cushite came, just tell him. Yeah, may all the enemies be like that man. He doesn't know the backstory. He's just giving it as it is. The man is dead. Because you see, another reason why, if you look at how David behaves sometimes, maybe just like, my son is dead, and you thought you brought me good news, kill him. You realize there was always that possibility because he has behaved like that before, albeit in that circumstance, it was the Lord's anointed who was killed. But it could have happened that way. So maybe Joab was trying to protect Ahimaaz as well. Maybe he was trying to say, listen, don't go. Because maybe when you go and tell him, oh, your son is dead, he said, you're running to tell me my son is dead? You thought you brought me good news. You understand? Everybody understanding. So we don't know exactly why, but Joab again told Ahimaaz something wise. That's why, in spite of everything about Joab, there's something about Joab I like. As I said on a previous occasion, it's a pity he had not consolidated his relationship with God. Because I like this man. He's a brave man. He really won David's victories. Even Jerusalem, it was Joab who won Jerusalem from the Jebusites. That's how he became head of the army. He was one of David's mighty men. That's how he became head of the army. And David promised him, anybody who captures Jerusalem will be the head of my army. Joab did that, so he became the head of the army. That's a very important fact for us to remember as we continue to read and we study the fate of Joab. So I believe, honestly, a lot of times Joab saved David's neck. A lot of times he intervened a very wise way when he saw that the king was making some decisions that were not necessarily right. Last week, I think it was, we saw a decision the king made. Yes, bring back the young man to Israel, but he's not coming to my presence. That is Absalom. Now, the young man knew only Joab could approach the king and mediate the matter. So he kept asking for Joab to come. Finally got to see Joab. And Joab agreed to mediate the matter, to try to get the king to accept his son. Now, that again was a Joab decision. This man is making serious decisions, both David's personal decisions and decisions that impact the whole nation. And he's making them as he sees fit. This man, Joab, is a very serious leader. There is a book by John Maxwell, and it speaks of leading when you're not the real leader. There is a level of leadership that can be exercised when you're not the top leader, but you're on the rank below that, and there's a certain level of power. And if you're diplomatic enough and tactical enough, you might be able to make decisions in the best interest. It should be in the best interest of your leader. Unfortunately, a lot of times when these second-tier leaders make decisions that go against the leader, it is not in the leader's best interest. But a godly second-tier leader will know how to make decisions in the best interest of the leader and the kingdom. And I honestly think Joab did that. But let us go to anything else on this chapter. So Absalom, so it says David is shaken. And the Bible tells us shaken. He is broken. His son is dead. He's bawling. David's a very emotional man, David, when Absalom came and ousted him, he went barefoot, bawling loud cow bawling, right? We call it cow bawling, right? Real vocal bawling. You know, he's a very emotional man. And you need to remember a significant portion of the Psalms, David wrote them. In fact, there is one, Psalm 3. Just put Psalm 3 up there for me, Mr. All right. Now you notice the Psalm? A Psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. He was writing poetry as he ran, as he was in exile from his own son. He was writing. Could somebody read Psalm 3 for us? Please. Miss Morris, you can continue. Who was reading? Mrs. Morris, right? Just read the Psalm first. This is a Psalm he wrote on that journey.
Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, the one who lifts my head high. I call out to the Lord and he answers me from his holy mountain. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear though tens of thousands assail on every side. Arise, Lord, deliver me, my God. Strike all my enemies on the jaw. Break the teeth of the wicked. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people.
Right. So this is one of the poems, one of the songs he wrote while he was fleeing. So when you read the psalm, it's not abstract. When he said 10,000, thousands, he said, I will not, what he said again? He says, I will not fear no tens of thousands that assail me on every side. This was no abstract thought. He was literally being attacked by thousands of people in the army, right? In the army of Israel. The army, and you know why it's so painful for him? Because he rose up that army, he developed that army, and that same army was coming against him. I want to tell you something, brethren. You must be very careful when you become a leader. You know, it's good to be a leader if God has called you, but you have to brace yourself because leadership is not easy. A role of leadership is normally a very lonely road. So if you study the Bible, Moses was stoned after, imagine Moses left the Midianite wilderness where he had a big sheep business. Do not think Moses was just looking after 10 little sheep. He had a big business. And God called him. No, it took a lot for him to go back into Egypt because the Pharaoh the former one, had wanted to kill him. And so it took a lot of courage. He had also lost a lot of his Egyptian culture, right? That's why when God called him, he said, I really can't talk, you know. This was a very eloquent man before, right? But no, he said, I really can't talk. God has a way when he's stripping you to leave you with absolutely nothing of your own flesh, right? And so he doesn't want, he did all that, risk his own life, came out of his comfort zone, and then the first thing that went wrong, they want to stone him. That's how leadership is. In other words, you know, we don't have any water, stone Moses. We tell the man up, stone Moses. The wilderness too hot, stone Moses. You look at there's another one. It wasn't Noah. No, it wasn't Noah. I don't remember who the other one I was thinking about, but David. Yes, David. When the enemy attacked their camp in the wilderness and took some people to exile, what did the men around him who were his army decide? Stone David, right? So leadership takes quite a bit. And if you look at the lines of this thing, he says, I lie down and sleep, I wake again because the Lord sustained me. This is no little easy poetry to sit down and dream up a line. This was happening to the man. The man was troubled. He said, God, only you can give me a good night rest today because I'm being pursued by my very own son. Help me, Father. How am I going to sleep? My life is in danger, right? And then he said, oh, I'm not going to fear. I'm not going to fear. I'm going to hang on to God, basically. And he said, God, you're the glory, the lifter of my head. Then he said, arise, God, deliver me, my God. Strike my enemies on the jaw. You know, I laugh when I see that line because that's actually praying that God will destroy Absalom. And yet he doesn't want Absalom hurt. It almost seems strange. Anyway, let's get back to the main text. The next chapter. Could we have another reader now, please? Chapter 19, anybody?
Joab was told, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom, and for the whole army, the victory that day was turned into mourning, because on that day the troops heard it said, the king is grieving for his son. The men stole into the city that day as men steal in who are ashamed when they flee from battle. The king covered his face and cried aloud, "Oh, my son Absalom! Oh, Absalom, my son, my son."
Let me just pause here a minute and go back down. Yes, that's a picture. That's a picture. Here it is. They just won. You were just being chased by your son. Your army was against you, right? But now you have won victory. But the only thing on David's mind, my son Absalom. Brethren, it's hard to lose a child. Very, very hard. But at the same time, sometimes you have to bury all of that and think. And then again, I told you, it's so emotional. I'm not sure if it's a cultural thing, because I know this happened to somebody in my side of the world, in our present day culture. The average male would grieve more silently. And there's nothing wrong with bawling, you know. I'm just saying there's a big difference. The average male, if his son dies, he's going to take it the very silent way. Probably pull himself away from people for a season and penetrate it in a very alone manner, you know. And I don't know if it's cultural or if it's David's personal style. I don't know if these people are more emotional, if the male psyche was more expressive. I am not quite clear. But whatever it is, he was a very expressive gentleman. Let's continue reading.
Then Joab went into the house to the king and said, "Today you have humiliated all your men, who have just saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters and the lives of your wives and concubines."
Stop there a minute. And that's true, because the practice in the Middle East in that period is if Absalom had become king, he would have killed off all possible competition. So he would have killed Solomon, Bathsheba, and all the king's sons and probably grandsons and his wives and concubines, because he wanted to leave no possible person. A lot of kings did that. We don't know if he would, but chances are he would, because of the nature of the man that we've seen painted in the Bible so far, and also because of how he came into power, right? He came into power, he got that power to himself, right? I want to say something here. In the previous chapter, it mentioned he had built a monument to himself, right? And you see, when you begin to build monuments to yourself, you open your mind to becoming so inflated that you lose reality, a sort of reality and grip on who you really are. The truth is, we all here are mere mortals. We really are nothing, brethren, in a real sense. Any of us can die tonight, any of us, right? And so this man had become so puffed up about who he was. This monument showed his mindset. That is Absalom we're talking about, right? That I would buy no tickets of him if I was one of the relatives of David. He'd have killed his own father. In fact, that was a counsel Ahithophel gave. And that's why they were fighting. They were determined to kill David. Right? Your own father, so you wouldn't spare anybody. So Joab is speaking sense into David's head. Let's continue.
Pastor.
Yes?
But just to put in another piece of evidence to support the killing of their siblings,
Yes.
we would see where when Solomon became king and his
Yes.
brother Adonijah seemed to have made a move which threatened his
Right.
reign, and he had him killed.
Of course. And Solomon was actually a very what would you say? We'll see that when it comes to him. But he was actually quite a compassionate person when he took power compared to the average person who takes power. Right? But in that case, Adonijah made a massive mistake, man. And so David, anyway, long and short, he decided, let's get rid of you. So they'll do it. But you'll find, if you read the book of Kings, you will find some of these leaders that when they take power, just all the competition goes.
Sorry.
Yes. Where are we at 6?
Yes.
Go
You
ahead.
love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You have made it clear today that the commanders and their men mean nothing to you. I see that you would be pleased if Absalom were alive today and all of us were dead. Now go out and encourage your men. I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. This will be worse for you than all the calamities that have come on you from your youth till now.
Wow. Wow. Now listen, Job is right. But Job is not just saying, you better go out. He said, fix you up, man. I'd fix you up. If you don't go, if you don't go, let me tell you, the leader of your army is a very critical person. He said, if you don't get out there right now, and he's right. The men have just risked their life for you. And you're here crying about Absalom. Come on, man. Is your brain getting soft? Get out there. David needed to have more self-control. Even if you are grieving for your son Absalom, which parents will do, you need to have the presence of mind to recognize that you have to congratulate and show strength to your men who fought for you. You need to go out there and show compassion. Listen, men died on that battlefield. They had wives and children. Did you say, anything any kind of? Did you give them the family of the dead soldiers any consolation? What, you're just preoccupied with Absalom, but you're not showing balance. And again, we see Joab setting this man straight, getting his mind straight, and saying, "Don't play with David. Don't play with it." Remember the scripture I showed you? Where David said, "Look, these sons of Zeruiah are too strong for me." Actually said, "I am the king, but these sons of Zeruiah are just too strong for me." And you will see the strength of Joab in this particular dialogue. Joab was not taking any foolishness. And honestly, he was right. He was right. It's a pity that David's leadership had not shown him enough wisdom or brought about enough wisdom for this not to happen. Because Joab shouldn't be speaking to his king like that. But in a moment like this, he had to speak to his king like this, right? So let's go on.
So the king got up and took his seat in the gateway. When the men were told, "The king is sitting in the gateway," they all came before him. Meanwhile, the Israelites had fled to their homes.
Right. The whole scenario wasn't healthy. Israelites, that's what was the 10 tribes, they're gone home, This guy not behaving like him. They would have fled anyway, because they were one of the primary sets of people who had joined Absalom. Right? So, what's the point, huh? Let's go on.
Throughout the tribes of Israel, all the people were arguing among themselves, saying, "The king delivered us from the hand of our enemies. He is the one who rescued us from the hand of the Philistines. But now he has fled the country to escape from Absalom. And Absalom, whom we anointed to rule over us, has died in battle. So why do you say nothing about bringing the king back?" King David sent this message to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests. "Ask the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his palace, since what is being said throughout Israel has reached the king at his quarters? You are my relatives, my own flesh and blood. Why should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa,
Are you not my own flesh and blood? May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if you are not the commander of my army for life in place of Joab.
Let's go back up to where she just started reading, please. So the different tribes are debating. No, just from 9 down. The different tribes are debating bringing David back to his palace. He had fled his palace because of Absalom. And they're debating bringing him back. It was just a matter of him riding up and going into his house. These kings, they would come with an entourage. You would show political support for your king. And so the tribes are saying, you know, we ought to bring back the king, right? This king here has delivered us from our enemies. Brethren, let me tell you something. I hate to have to play upon it, but this story is extremely graphic in terms of this particular truth. The truth that leadership is so terrible and that people aren't grateful. Yes, David fought their battles. These are the same people who were singing. David, Saul killed his thousands, but David, his tens of thousands. He delivered them from the hands of the Philistines. He gave them solid, stable leadership. He established the kingship. He captured and built up Jerusalem, right? Zion, the city of God, right? He made provision. He's making provision for the temple. He brought a righteous room. He brought back the ark, reestablished worship of Jehovah God, of Yahweh in Jerusalem. This is the one, you know. And you betrayed him with his own son for whatever reason. You must have had your reason. But now they're disputing. Should we bring him back? Should we bring him back? David heard about that, but he approached Judah, his own tribe. And he's saying, listen, when are you going to bring me back? You're my own flesh and blood. Listen, the others were not his tribe, right? They were not his tribe. So he said to his tribe, Judah, when are you going to bring me back? Yes, they're talking about it, but you shouldn't even have to talk about it. You should have come out and met me and brought me back to my palace, right? Let's continue. By the way, you notice, let's go down to where he makes Amasa head of the army. Right, this you passed it, it's there? No, to me, all right, let me not say that. Verse 13. Anybody has an opinion on verse 13?
Yes, Pastor, I don't think you should have made Amasa decided to make Amasa the commander then. Because,
go ahead.
Because he knows Joab. He knows Joab temperament, and Joab already killed. No, sorry, he didn't. I'm jumping ahead of myself.
Yes, he killed Abner.
I guess, yeah, but he hadn't done it yet.
Yeah, man.
Oh, yes, he had. Oh, yeah.
Abner.
All right.
He killed Abner from when Saul lost power, when Saul died.
Right. And so, I don't know how he would have expected Joab to take. I don't think he was thinking. He wasn't thinking.
I have to wonder, what is David eating and drinking? What kind of decision is that for a leader? You are actually creating schism. You're creating disunity.
That's right, Pastor.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just thinking that it's another emotive decision again, based on how he was feeling. He probably felt vexed that, Joab deal with him the way he dealt with him because of how he was handling himself, and he probably felt upset that Joab decided to take that Absalom was dead. So he in his emotions, this was just an irrational decision that he made.
Yes, and maybe it was vindictive too,
Yes, good
possibility. Maybe it was vindictive. You kill my son, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you.
I have a question, Pastor Helen. On the background of this young man, Joab, the king himself saying they're too strong for me, and twice Joab threatened to take the kingdom from David. Not once, but twice, if I recall correctly. I am wondering if this should not have been something he had done already. And I know it's...
You're wondering if something that he shouldn't have changed the leader long ago.
No, if he should, exactly, because to me, because there's a way to deal with a leader, and as you had said, Joab seemed to have not consolidated his relationship with the God of Israel, and so there's a lot of carnality coming out of Joab, and it makes me wonder. It's just a question.
All right, personally, right now, I think a lot of carnality coming out of David too. Because I can't see this decision. I respect your question, though. You're saying earlier on he should have changed the leader. He tried. Remember Abner, after Saul died, Abner had a lot of power. He was a commander of Saul's army. He was also David's boss when David worked with Saul. And so he'd have trained David. David had a love for Abner, right? But Abner was, when Saul died, he took Saul's son and put him as king, one of Saul's sons, right? Put him as king. And when that son died, then he came to David. And David was very prepared to make him the head of the army. Here's the problem. And this is, to me, you see these chapters that we're reading? If we're in a different context, we'd look for all the leadership gems out of it. And you can learn a lot from this. David was prepared to jettison Joab and take up Abner at that juncture. So what you're saying, it did cross David's mind. But if you recall the story, Joab would have none of it. Joab killed Abner. And David was infuriated. In fact, as you go along the book,
yes, I'm listening.
As you go along in the book, you're going to find that David never ever forgot what Joab did to Abner. Now, I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't understand David, because Abner was a part of the army that was chasing him in the wilderness. He was Saul's guy, right? When you look at Amasa had sided with Absalom. I would never have thought that you would see a man who just revolted against you with your own son and heading an army that chased you down to kill you, and you are prepared to make him the head of your army. I cannot for the life of it see it. Is there anybody who thinks it made sense? Honestly.
Pastor, just an addition here.
Yes.
The situation with Abner, remember that he came over when he was dissed.
Yes, when he was dissed, yes. When he was dissed, yes, true.
Yes, and he had not yet.
And he was sleeping with a particular concubine.
Yes, and David had not yet arrived. Well, at least it's not established what type of specific arrangement that they would have had. When
you study those scriptures, David was prepared to make Abner. I don't want to go back to them, but when you read it, you know that he was going to become the head of the army. When you read it, right? Yes, go ahead.
You shared something last week about being loyal, and yes. I don't think David was recognizing that Joab was loyal to him. Yes. And loyal to his kingship, because if you're gonna make somebody who's the head of another army that was chasing you down to kill you the head of your army, that's not a loyal that person is not loyal to you. Despite whatever Joab was doing, he was very loyal to David and very loyal to David's kingship.
Was gross disrespect for a man who had just risked his life for you. Right? What he's showing is David. You see, David, God has allowed David's frailties to be very evident. If you're looking at it keenly, yes, this was a very righteous man, but this man was making one leadership mistake after another. Right? When you're a good and true leader, you have to learn to work with even people you don't like, You have to learn to work with even people you don't like. You have to understand how to use their skills, and you have to learn to be fair to them too and reward them if they need to be rewarded. I believe what he should have done with Joab, he should have rewarded Joab and congratulated him on the victory. Right? But he was so afraid of Joab too. And rightly so, because Joab was so powerful. No wonder David was a man of prayer. Because somebody like Joab, it's only prayer that can really control a man like Joab, believe me. Anyway, all right, so where are we now? Right, so he swears that he's changing his army, and he says, you will be commander of my army for life in place of Joab. Wow, David, come on now. Let's go to verse 14. Read on, please.
He won over the hearts of the men of Judah, so that they were all of one mind. They sent word to the king, return, you and all your men. Then the king returned and went as far as the Jordan. Now the men of Judah had come to Gilgal to go out and meet the king and bring him across the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite, from Bahurim, hurried down with the men of Judah to meet King David. With him were 1,000 Benjamites, along with Ziba, the steward of Saul's household, and his 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed to the Jordan where the king was. They crossed at the ford to take the king's household over and to do whatever he wished.
Let's stop here a minute. Shimei. Hope you remember who Shimei was, right? Let's finish reading about him first. But look at this. When it says the king's household, chances are people like Bathsheba was there, running for her life. Solomon, young, whatever age Solomon was at the time, the king's sons, all his various wives. I don't know what became of Abigail if she was still alive. And he had other wives as well. They were all there. They were running, right? So let's see. Let's go down. Let's see.
I have a noisy background. Can someone take over, please?
All right.
When Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan, he fell prostrate before the king and said to him, may my lord not hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind, for I, your servant, know that I have sinned. But today I have come here as the first from the tribes of Joseph to come down and meet my lord the king.
Who is this man Shimei? Who is this man Shimei? Somebody tell me about Shimei. Somebody tell me about Shimei.
Right now, he's very remorseful, Pastor. Because
You think he's remorseful? Maybe. Let me tell you.
sorry that you get caught. No.
Pastor, he tried to save his life.
That's it. There are some people who, when you see them remorseful, it's not because they recognize they've done wrong, but because they realize they're soon dead. I mean, because he was
Shimei.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Shimei is the same fellow that when I think of Shimei, I think of he reminds me of Nabal in some respects. A very foolish man, stupid, surly. He decided as the king was going through, crossing the Kidron Valley and going over the other side, he decided, you know what? When he was fleeing actually from Absalom,
yes,
he cursed him and threw dirt, stone at them and all of that, and showered the man of God.
Yes.
It's so much so that it irks Abishai and the other guys, Joab's brothers.
Yes.
Abishai said, all right, David, look here. I can take him off and I can just take off this dead dog's head. You understand me? David just stopped him and all of that. I said, perhaps the Lord, tell him to curse me and all of that.
Yes.
Let him be. But David have it in the back of his mind, right? And know exactly what kind of instruction he was going to give later on. Well, I mean, probably wasn't thinking like that then, but we know eventually what happened to Shimei. He might have. Yes. So that's Shimei. Him in trouble and him know it.
Yes.
But I don't necessarily think him sorry about nothing.
Thank you.
He's not gonna change. It's just like the scripture that talks about godly sorrow leads to repentance. But worldly sorrow leads to I'm really sorry that. He don't really mean it at all. He just
I don't think so either. And guess what? The thing about it in life, let's face it, brethren. That's why I love the Bible so much. Because you are seeing human beings lined up and described from Genesis right to Revelation. You are seeing different human beings caricatured. You're seeing them painted before you. Just like how Shimei did this, you might meet somebody in your life who does that exact thing to you. When you're on the face, they would stamp your head. And if by some means you recover, they become like they try to act as if they're the most loyal person to you. It's a reality, you know? Miss Marvel, you said something? Right? They try to act like they're the most loyal. So you just have this Shimei spirit is real, brethren. What does that tell us about life? It tells us you have to have your eyes wide open at all times. It's a foolish man who goes into the world with what you call wild eye wonder. You're walking through life like a nursery rhyme. You're walking through life like you have no intelligence, no discernment. You know, one of the things I note, Jesus himself, the Son of the living God, while he walked on this earth, he said, men's hearts are deceitful. He basically said, you cannot entrust yourself to human beings. Do you know that? Do you know you have to learn how to love people without entrusting yourself to them? So you have to walk in discernment if you're going to be a true leader, or even a true Christian. You're going to have to walk in discernment at all times. You're looking around you. Okay, I saw that. All right, thank you, Jesus. Thanks for showing me this. And you still have to love the people. You still have to walk through them. You still have to interact with them. But you must be 100% aware of the human heart. And the Shimei spirit is one of the spirits that we all encounter at times. You'll see in your workplace. There are people in your workplace who are like Shimei. They'll take you out if you're down. If they think you're going down and you're not coming back, they'll take you out. They'll join your enemies. But if perchance you survive and you're promoted, they will come right up to you, act like they're so sorry, and they'll try to become your friend. Be very careful. Let's read on.
Pastor, if I could add here, you know, the story of Shimei as well is one that reminds us we must be careful what we say and to whom we say.
Yes.
This is one of the incidents that David and one of the persons that David would remember on his deathbed.
Right.
He gave Solomon's specific regarding Shimei.
Yes.
And of course, and we know the rest of this story there. But the man of God would remember this to the point where instructions were given, and be careful what we say and do what we say.
But you know, there's another side to it too. You must be careful. You're not a Shimei. You realize that? We're talking about being able to identify the Shimei spirit in people you walk through daily. But many of us are Shimei. We will do it. You understand me? We don't have that sense of loyalty. We don't have that sense of honor. We don't have that sense of consistency. We'll destroy people if we think that they have no power left, right? We have to put our spirits in a more noble position where we do not degrade the righteousness in us. We do not degrade ourselves to a Shimei level. And not only that, Shimei had no vision. I was there said, oh yes, you see that now? God is punishing you because of what you did to Saul. And today God is going to restore the house of Saul. How stupid do we get? Right? So he had no vision, because if you had vision, you would know this is the anointed king of Israel. You'd have known it. Because David knew it all through his life that Saul was anointed. So anybody with good spiritual understanding would have understood that this was the appointed anointed king of Israel. Abigail knew that from she met him. She knew David was anointed by God to lead the people of Israel. So how come Shimei didn't know? He was as blind as ever spiritually. And so you and I need to make sure we don't fall in that category.
Also, and to just add, Proverbs 24:17-18 says, yes. Do not gloat when your enemy falls. When they stumble, do not let your heart rejoice. For yes. The Lord will see and disapprove and turn his wrath away from them.
Exactly. Exactly. So let's move on now. please. Mrs. Parsley?
Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said, shouldn't Shimei be put to death for this? He cursed the Lord's anointed. David replied, what does this have to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? What right do you have to interfere? Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? Don't I know that today I am king over Israel? So the king said to Shimei, you shall not die. And the king promised him on oath. Mephibosheth, yes.
Let's just say something here. What do you think about David's decision here?
David still sounds like him vexed.
It seems what?
He still sounds upset. What?
So you think he's making this decision because he's upset at the sons of Zeruiah?
At the sons of Zeruiah, because he made it. He said, "What does again?" Abishai gave an objective perspective, right? And David, what does have to do with you, son of Zeruiah? You know, he still sounds a bit upset at the sons of Zeruiah.
All right. Anybody has another opinion?
I think
that he decided not to prove Shimei, in a sense, quote unquote, prove Shimei right, because Shimei was calling him like a murderer.
So you feel like he's just trying to show Shimei I'm not a murderer?
In a way, but I think he knew he would deal with him. Like he's thinking about, he going to take some time to think through how he's going to treat the matter.
All right.
But
yeah, I'm wondering, Pastor Helen, if David, sorry. I'm wondering if David wanted a certain level of peace, and there was a lot of bloodshed that had taken place up to this point, just because David was king and for the name of David, and he knows that these sons of Zeruiah are prone to that kind of behavior. So I'm just wondering if he kind of just wants to rest the whole bloodshed that has been taking place or end it.
That's the kind of what you say.
Well, I'm working with a combination of what has been said by the ladies. Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? But take it easy. Yes. I got this.
Yeah, I feel I don't think it was necessarily a vindictive decision.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
I don't necessarily think he wanted to prove anything to Shimei. I believe the last comment. Listen, remember, this is David still, in spite of his failures and foibles. This is David. This man is intimately connecting to God, and he knows what the deliverance of God means. If you look at the comments he made when the man was stoning him and throwing dirt on him, he said, perchance God is letting this happen. So he had a more spiritual perspective on some things. So he said, you know something? Personally, I don't need to deliver myself sometimes. I don't need to kill everybody. And, somebody made a comment one day that this was a very different David. Can you remember what Nabal got? When Nabal did not set up supplies, he was strapping himself with a sword to go and wipe out everybody. Right? But this David now is probably more seasoned, older, and he's trying to connect with God. God is really our deliverer. It's the same kind of thing when people do something sometimes. You do not have to solve it in your natural self. There are times when you can commit it to the Lord and allow God to do it. And I honestly think that's what's at work. Right? But let's continue. 24.
Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, also went down to meet the king. He had not taken care of his feet, or trimmed his mustache, or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he returned safely. When he came from Jerusalem to meet the king asked him, why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth? He said, my lord the king, since I, your servant, am lame, I said, I will have my donkey saddled and will ride on it so I can go with the king. But Ziba, my servant, betrayed me, and he has slandered your servant to my lord the king. My lord the king is like an angel of God, so do whatever you wish. All my grandfather's descendants deserve nothing but death from my lord the king, but you gave your servant a place among those who eat at your table. So what right do I have to make any more appeals to the king?" The king said to him, "Why say more? I order you and Ziba to divide the land." Mephibosheth said to the king, "Let him take everything, now that my lord the king has returned home safely."
All right. You remember what Ziba had told when David was running away from Absalom? Ziba, who was the servant of Mephibosheth, had told David how Ziba said, yes, man, I'm not going with him. I'm going to stay here because the kingdom will be restored to my father. Anybody remembers that dialogue? And David had said, okay, then you take all the property that belonged to Saul. That was one of the decisions as I tell you, sometimes I don't understand David, my good friend, you know. Because one would think David's a man who inquired of the Lord. He didn't inquire about the Lord that time. He didn't think it through to say, that doesn't sound like Mephibosheth. Something about what he's telling me. Because Absalom was not fighting on behalf of Saul's host. He was fighting for Absalom and Absalom alone. But David, I don't know, because he was distraught, he was running, he didn't think it through, and he gave away all of Mephibosheth's possessions. Now listen, so now Mephibosheth meets him. This man is crippled in both feet. And he said, David, he tricked me, he slandered me, he just violated. And to underscore how genuine he is, Mephibosheth said, let him take all the wealth. I don't even care. Anybody believe Ziba was right? That Ziba was telling the truth? Long and short.
Well, Pastor, I think that if Mephibosheth was planning to overthrow the kingdom, then he would certainly bathe and trim and look after him.
Of course. He purposely left it to prove it to David because the man Ziba is wicked. It's why people in the Bible I honestly don't like Ziba. They don't like Ziba. But anyway, so the king said, why say more? Split it. And Mephibosheth said, let him go with it. So what is really happening here now? David is now returning to his palace in Jerusalem, and different entities are making sure they're in good stead with him. Right? Different entities are presenting themselves, because once he sits back on that throne, he can make any decision. Could have made it even before the throne. So everybody's making sure, all right, look like the king coming back, you know, so hey, let's try and do this, you know. Anyway, continue reading.
Barzillai the Gileadite also came down from Rogelim to cross the Jordan with the king, and to send him on his way from there. Now Barzillai was very old, 80 years of age. He had provided for the king during his stay in Mahanaim, for he was a very wealthy man. The king said to Barzillai, cross over with me and stay with me in Jerusalem, and I will provide for you. But Barzillai answered the king, how many more years will I live that I should go up to Jerusalem with the king? I am now 80 years old. Can I tell the difference between what is enjoyable and what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats and drinks? Can I still hear the voices of male and female singers? Why should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant will cross over the Jordan with the king for a short distance. But why should the king reward me in this way? Let your servant return, that I may die in my own home, in my own town, near the tomb of my father and mother. But here is your servant Kimham. Let him cross over with my lord the king. Do for him whatever you wish. The king said, Kimham shall cross over with me, and I will do for him whatever you wish. And anything you desire from me, I will do for you. So all the people crossed.
Wait, just stop there a moment. So this is what I like and what I extract most from this little passage is Barzillai. Barzillai, I like him. He's one of my persons, you know. And Barzillai, what I can extract is age. The age does something for you. What David was doing, he was inviting Barzillai to a urban life, to a life of prestige. You know, it's urban, it's prestigious. You're in the king's courts. He had some, remember, Barzillai was a faithful. So he had supplied all of the king's needs, or a lot of the king's needs, while David was running. So David wanted to honor him. Barzillai said, look, I'm an old man. I'm not delighting in food and drink and singers. The urban life, the life at the court has zero appeal for me. I'm comfortable right where I'm okay, right? But here's a young man who can savor those things that you're offering me. Here's a young man who's at the age. Age does a lot for you. It changes you, right? It changes you. And you will see, in fact, as you go along reading, that nowadays, after a while, you're going to find that the army of Israel tell David, don't go out physically to war anymore. Basically, age changes you, bodily changes you. You're not as quick and sprightly as before, right? And your taste change, your mindset changes. So it doesn't mean you should sit down and die. You still remain dynamic in what you're doing. You're still used of God, but God's use of you has to change. Even Paul said it. He said, I call on the young men because they're strong. Paul was serving God right up until his death, but he recognized that age changes people. And so I believe that's the most salient extraction from this. And how does it apply to us? If you're pastoring people in a cell, you must realize you're at different stages and ages. And so you must have that little recognition of the difference and what it implies. So let's read 39 now.
So all the people crossed the Jordan, and then the king crossed over. The king kissed Barzillai and bid him farewell, and Barzillai returned to his home.
By the way, this is alien for us. The king kissed Barzillai. But the Middle Eastern culture, even nowadays, if you're watching the news from the Middle Eastern countries, you'll see them hold each other and kiss the two cheeks like that. The Jews do it, the Saudi Arabia, Iran, all those Middle Eastern people tend to do the double kiss thing. That's why in the New Testament, he said, greet everybody with a holy kiss. Someone said, oh, it's Bible, God said I must give holy kiss. It was a cultural practice. In our context, we need to be kissing everybody. I don't want nobody who will better about Bible say you must kiss me. You understand? I'm not used to that, neither are you. And so we don't need to make that practice, but that's how they did their thing. Very important to clarify, because in our day and age, people see the king kiss Barzillai and say, kiss Barzillai? Who was Barzillai? A man? Yeah. And then they'll say, okay, I remember I did like Jonathan, and people, some of all kinds of unholy thoughts that are far from the truth, right? So let's move on. Read on, Sister Shaista.
Yes. When the king crossed over to Gilgal, Kimham crossed with him. All the troops of Judah and half the troops of Israel had taken the king over.
So you see something there. All the troops of Israel, but only half of the troops of Israel. Let's go on.
Soon all the men of Israel were coming to the king and saying to him, why did our brothers, the men of Judah, steal the king away and bring him and his household across the Jordan, together with all his men? All the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, we did this because the king is closely related to us. Why are you angry about it? Have we eaten any of the king's provisions? Have we taken anything for ourselves? Then the men of Israel answered the men of Judah, we have 10 shares in the king, so we have a greater claim on David than you have. Why then do you treat us with contempt? Weren't we the first to speak of bringing back our king?
Right. So they're bickering among themselves as to who, and I see this in even the Psalms. I don't know which Psalm it is, but there's a Psalm when Ephraim was quarreling with them. Why didn't you call us? You were going to fight, you should have called us. Remember, these things happen. Now, they could have brought the king back whenever they want. They didn't do it. Judah does it, so you're going to bicker. And what chapter was that, Mr. Rowe? 20? 19?
Chapter 19, Pastor.
19.
Yes.
Pastor Helen.
We have to try and move with 20. You know why? Because I want to try and finish it. Next week it will be our fourth Sunday. And so we'll be having this meeting then. Right? So at least I have to do at least 20. Yes, I think I heard somebody's voice.
Yes, Pastor Helen. So, but I was just saying that story that you just mentioned about Ephraim arguing about why they didn't call them. I believe it was in the book of Judges with Gideon when he was going to fight battle.
That too. It's in Psalms and it's also in Judges. It's in Judges as well.
Okay, I don't know.
Right. There's also one in Psalms. Right. So let us go on. Let's go to next.
But the men of Judah pressed. I was finishing up the last sentence. But the men of Judah pressed their claims even more forcefully than the men of Israel.
Discontent in the camp. Let's go on.
You're going to ask for another reader?
Just go on. Just go on.
Now a troublemaker named Sheba, son of Bichri, a Benjamite, happened to be there. He sounded the trumpet and shouted, "We have no share in David, no part in Jesse's son. Every man to his tent, Israel." So all the men of Israel deserted David to follow Sheba, son of Bichri. But the men of Judah stayed by their king all the way from Jordan to Jerusalem.
Why do you think? Anybody can tell me why this guy Sheba, son of Bichri, may be antagonistic towards David?
Pastor Brown, he's from the same tribe as King Saul, so I don't know if he probably still has some allegiance to Saul's household.
Exactly. And you heard it even with Shimei. It seems that there was still this undercurrent that felt like David, that the kingdom should have gone to Saul's son and not to David. So there's that undercurrent, and it could have fueled a lot of the divisions that we're seeing in the kingdom at this time. Go on for me.
When David returned to his palace in Jerusalem, he took the 10 concubines he had left to take care of the palace and put them in a house under guard. He provided for them but had no sexual relations with them. They were kept in confinement till the day of their death, living as widows.
Well, all right, you know this now. Let me tell you. These 10 concubines had been left, when David fled from Absalom, they were left to take care of the palace. Absalom, his son, put a tent on the roof to make sure everybody saw it and had intimate relations with these women. They were David's concubines. He had intimate relations with them. And it was actually prophesied that when he had sinned with Bathsheba, that's when the prophecy that came that people were going to do these things openly to him, that they were going to violate his sexual rights or his sexual privacy. You know, what should belong to him sexually, that they were going to openly violate. And so this is a fulfillment of prophecy. But you know something? Whenever I say scripture like this, I zero in on the woman, because I'm a woman. I'm saying, what fear are we? These women had nothing to do with what took place. Most of them didn't even have a choice when they came to David to become his concubine. Then, afterwards, you are left and told to take care of the palace. His son comes and orders you into another sexual relationship. You could not have told Absalom no, right? And now look at them. They're almost in prison. They're kept in confinement. That means they can have no other spouse. They will never have another man in their lives. They live like nuns. He does take care of them in terms of food, etc. But they are never allowed to have another man sleep with them. What are your thoughts? They are living as widows.
This is unfair,
Like,
Pastor Helen.
Unfair. It is totally. It's the women of that society were not empowered. They were totally not empowered, and so they could not fight. So what would you do if it was you?
It would be good to try and love God and see the Lord like Anna.
Exactly one of the options is to become totally righteous and just develop this intimate relationship with God. It's one option. Anybody else, what would you do?
I'd probably run away, Pastor Helen.
That's another option that occurred to me as well.
And
I'm seeing myself
and
right
then
now.
see God and become totally righteous.
Where would you run to? That both options came to me. But I can see myself plan an escape. I've been going to the Philistine country, still in Israel. I'm going to their enemies, whoever is the enemy of Israel at that time. I must can find something down there to do. Because that kind of confinement is to me, it's cruelty, right? Anyway, let's go on, read on.
Then the king said to Amasa, summon the men of Judah to come to me within 3 days, and be here yourself. But when Amasa went to summon Judah, longer than the time the king had set for him, David said to Abishai, now Sheba, son of Bichri, will do us more harm than Absalom did. Take your master's men and pursue him, or he will find fortified cities and escape from us. So Joab's men and the Kerethites and Pelethites and all the mighty warriors went out under the command of Abishai. They marched out from Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. While they were at the...
Before you go, let's look at this though. Amasa is now the head of the army. David has made the decision. He has said you'll be there for life, right? And now he sends him on his first assignment. He gives him a specific time. You remember that there's no an insurrection being led by this guy Sheba, son of Bichri, right? And so this is urgent. You have to stem that thing. Even David realizes that this guy is even more dangerous than Absalom. No, brothers and sisters. If he's more dangerous than Absalom, he's truly dangerous. And so he realizes it, right? So he gives him the assignment. 3 days. The man doesn't come back. He doesn't come back. At least not within the time frame. So he realizes time is going out. Time is going out. I cannot allow this thing to grow. So he calls Abishai. So I'm laughing, Bertrand, I'm just laughing. He cannot talk to Joab. Joab. It's like you realize you're now in a pickle. You're now in trouble. There's an insurrection in your country. You find your trustful army general. Find him. Put your enemy, a man who just don't pursue you, in charge. Send him on a mission. He fails his first assignment, which was simply to muster the troops of Judah. Right? I can even see a problem right there as well. Because, first, as far as my memory goes, and you can help me here, Amasa is also from a tribe of Judah. But there's something about Amasa that we need to check. I think his father was an Ishmaelite or something.
Yes, Pastor.
His father was an Ishmaelite.
Yes.
Yes. No, I see a little problem right here, because when you're going to muster troops, you have to be able to muster them. Is Judah going to follow Amasa? You just don't pursue. Yes, see the famous thing, yes? So his mother is Abigail, his father is Jephthah, right? Right. But you said that Jephthah is an Ishmaelite?
Yes, Pastor.
Yes. All right. Praise God. So listen now. Can you even muster them? Something went wrong when he went and tried to muster them. You see leadership, brethren? There's a scripture, one of my ultra favorite scriptures, Psalm 72, the last verse. He said, I hope, no, it's not it, That's not it. There's a verse in the Psalms.
78, Pastor.
Pardon?
Is it 78 you're looking for with David and the shepherd of these people?
No. There's a verse in Psalms that says, you have subdued peoples under me. these are people are naturally rebellious, believe me. Mankind is naturally rebellious. To lead people, you must have, at least in the body of Christ, you must have the anointing to lead them. So he's going to try and muster Judah, number one, who respects you anyway, right? Right. Yeah, that one I'm thinking of anyway. It's what you have subdued people under me, right? But thanks. So Amasa can't muster them. That's what I think is happening. That's why he hasn't come back in 3 days. He's having difficulty. He's having difficulty. So now David finds the trouble and he says, hey, Abishai, come here. Come here, Abishai. Remember, these guys are all cousins and uncles, and you remember it. Joab is to call, get me now, I get mixed up on this. Joab is to call David what? Uncle or cousin? Let's go back to a tree. Zeruiah, Joab, right?
Uncle.
Right, he's to call David uncle, and Abishai is also called the uncle. I remember the beautiful Asabel who felt he couldn't run faster than Abner and got himself killed.
That should be Asahel.
Asahel, sorry. Well, this one has it wrong then. It's really Asahel for true. Right, it should be Asahel, it has Asabel. Even though it might not be wrong, because you see names, they're very tricky. They could have somewhere and some reason why they put beats of H. Anyway, that's not for tonight's investigation. Amasa is a cousin, so it's all in the family. It's all in the family, all right? So here it is. He can't approach David. So here it is. He is the God who avenges me, who subdues nations on me. It takes God to subdue people under you. That's why some churches are scattering the people who carry the anointing to keep it together. Now the wisdom of God to know how to relate to each group, because we're naturally rebellious. There's all kind of sin passing through people's hearts. You have to know to manage them, right? So let's go back to our text. So it cannot call Joab, so it has to go right back to the sons of Zeruiah. The same son he just cursed off, tell him, what does this have to do with you? Remember in the matter of Shimei, what does this have to do with you? Do you have to interfere? But he goes back to him, and let's see what happens. Right? Go ahead, Mrs. Pasley.
Now, Sheba, son of Bichri, will do us more harm than Absalom did. Take your master's men and pursue him, or he will find fortified cities and escape from us. So Joab's men and the Kerethites and Pelethites.
Just stop there. These guys are like, let me put in modern parlance. They are mercenaries. Mercenaries are paid soldiers, right? And they are like Navy SEALs. They're specialized, high-level warriors. And a lot of these Kerethites and Pelethites serve very close around David, almost like his bodyguard, right? So let's go on.
And all the mighty warriors went out under the command of Abishai. They marched out from Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri. While they were at the great rock in Gibeon.
So pause a minute. So you see how quickly they were able to muster these troops, though? Something Amasa could not do, right? So let's go on.
While they were at the great rock in Gibeon, Amasa came to meet them. Joab was wearing his military tunic, and strapped over it at his waist was a belt with a dagger in its sheath. As he stepped forward, it dropped out of its sheath. Joab said to Amasa, "How are you, my brother?" Then Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. Amasa was not on his guard against the dagger in Joab's hand, and Joab plunged it into his belly, and his intestines spilled out on the ground. Without being stabbed again, Amasa died. Then Joab and his brother Abishai pursued Sheba, son of Bichri.
Oh my goodness, if this wasn't so macabre, it would be humorous. The truth is, David was right. Amasa was head of his army for life. It's just that David didn't know his life was going to be a few days,
I'm sorry, yeah.
right? So Abishai and Joab, his brother, are excellent friends. These guys are very tight. And so when you tell, you're almost telling Joab to take over back when you tell Abishai. Because that's exactly what happens. Now, just for interest though, let's look at the killing of Abner. And you'll see how similar it is. Just look up the killing of Abner. All right. All right, yeah. Where's the specific thing? All right, Joab then left David and sent messengers after Abner. They brought him back from the cistern at Sirah, but David did not know it. Now, when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside into an inner chamber as if to speak with him privately, and there, to avenge the blood of his brother Asahel, Joab stabbed him in the stomach and he died. All right, go back to the text, the prime text. So you see, Joab knows these guys are warriors, they're fierce. But when you read the text, in the killing of Amasa, it's just, they don't care. These guys see death every day. It's their job. So they kill this person and it's gone. They just leave him right there. Right? Just right there. Continue.
Yes. Sorry, Pastor. It's just that you reminded me of Jehu. It just seemed a little weird to me the way how he killed a number of people and then told people to throw down Jezebel, and then he just went in and ate.
He just went in and ate, yeah.
Yeah. But you put it in context for me.
Yeah. The truth is though, if you're a soldier, you have to have that still. Let's face it. Because if you're going to see death every day, 24/7, how can you not have that kind of attitude? Or else you'd, before I'm balling and crying, I can't eat. You know what I mean? But let's continue. But you know one thing, sorry. You know what the line said, Amasa was not on his guard against the dagger. It shows that this man was as savvy a soldier as maybe he should have been. Because if he was thinking, I just got Joel's position, so hey, I don't want nothing to do with this guy, and I'm going to stay as far as I can from him. Look at him. This man is moving to hug you up, and you allowed to even come that near? This guy is not alert, believe me. He doesn't deserve the position. Let's continue.
One of Joab's men stood beside Amasa and said, "Whoever favors Joab and whoever is for David, let him follow Joab." Amasa lay wallowing in his blood in the middle of the road, and the man saw that all the troops came to a halt there. When he realized that everyone who came up to Amasa stopped, he dragged him from the road into a field and threw a garment over him. After Amasa had been removed from the road, everyone went on with Joab to pursue Sheba, son of Bichri.
All right, so listen, wallowing in his blood would suggest to me that, because sometimes when you die, your body still convulses and moves, I don't know, but the only reason they even threw something over him is so they could get on with their job. That's the only reason. Right. All right, good. So let's continue, please. Reader.
Sheba passed through all the tribes of Israel to Abel Beth Maachah and through the entire region of the Bichrites, who gathered together and followed him. All the troops with Joab came and besieged Sheba in Abel Beth Maachah. They built a siege ramp up to the city, and it stood against the outer fortifications. While they were battering the wall to bring it down, a wise woman called from the city, "Listen, listen! Tell Joab to come here so I can speak to him." He went toward her and she asked, "Are you Joab?" "I am," he answered. She said, "Listen to what your servant has to say."
Just
I'm
before we
listening.
continue. So they now are in a what you call a fortified city. This man has gathered his relatives, the big rights, and I guess there are many others too who joined him who feel this is the right thing for Israel at this time. We need to have a political change. All right. And so they go he runs into a fortified city and they build a siege ramp. A siege ramp is something, one, the city is on the siege, that means nobody can come or go, but it's also a ramp that would allow them at some point to enter the city, right? And so this is what is happening. And so this wise man calls Joab. Let's see what happens from there.
Listen to what your servant has to say. I'm listening, he said. She continued. Long ago, they used to say, get your answer at Abel, and that settled it. We are the peaceful and faithful in Israel. You are trying to destroy a city that is a mother in Israel. Why do you want to swallow up the Lord's inheritance? Far be it from me, Joab replied. Far be it from me to swallow up or destroy. That is not the case. A man named Sheba, son of Bichri, from the hill country of Ephraim, has lifted up his hand against the king, against David. Hand over this one man, and I'll withdraw from the city. The woman said to Joab, his head will be thrown to you from the wall. Then the woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off the head of Sheba, son of Bichri, and threw it to Joab. So he sounded the trumpet, and his men dispersed from the city, each returning to his home. And Joab went back to the king in Jerusalem.
All right. Now, throughout the passages we've read today, there's a spiritual principle that is being played out. Smite the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. And you saw it with the counsel that was given by Ahithophel, that they should go out there and take out David and leave everybody. You saw it repeatedly, take out the head, take out the head, take out the head. And you see it again. They realize, take out this man Bichri, Sheba, son of Bichri. And pretty much this will just peter out. And so they follow that, which was a very wise thing because it helps to curtail the amount of bloodshed that would have had to happen. And so, but do you notice who the lady called? Joab. Do you notice who is calling all the shots in the army again? Joab. So Joab, when David made that decision, I can just imagine Joab said, okay, really no. I can just imagine him leaning back and say, okay, he said what? That I am not the head of the army? All right, we'll see about that. Because he knew not only was he the head, but he had to be the head. He was the most competent. And guess what? David had made a covenant that Joab fulfilled. Anybody who conquered the Jebusites would head the army. David's own mouth said that. And he did his job, risked his life, and got the position. And he has repeatedly risked his life for David and Israel. So he's quite relaxed in his position. He realizes that David has some emotional stuff going on, and sometimes when he makes a decision, he's really not thinking. Believe me. So let's go on.
Joab was over Israel's entire army. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was over the Kerethites and Pelethites. Adoniram was in charge of forced labor. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was recorder. Shiva was secretary. Zadok and Abiathar were priests, and Ira the Jairite was David's priest.
And this is pretty much like David's inner cabinet, right? This is pretty much like David's inner cabinet. There is something here I want you to notice though before we close, that the Benaiah, who was head of the bodyguards, and he had a special paid troop working with him, the Kerethites and the Pelethites. And this was, to me, this seemed like a very wise policy, because the last thing you want is some very intimate soldiers who fight their army to be a part of your bodyguard. Whoever is your bodyguard has to be highly trusted. So to me, having mercenaries right around the king, to me, seems like a very, very wise policy. And Benaiah, obviously, you'll come across him again in a later chapter in the book of Samuel. He seemed like a very reliable person. And to be honest, even spiritually, you have to have the closest people to you, the people with integrity of heart, because the world is vicious. The world is vicious. And so this was an excellent model that David has here. But listen, the Bible says it. Joab was over Israel's entire army. And the Bible just says that so unequivocally that it's almost humorous. Isn't God a wonderful God? Yes, we're going to call it today a day for today, and we praise God for our reading today.